And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bubba and the BatFlip, episode 104. Continuing our positional recaps of the 2021 fantasy baseball season. Heading around the diamond, second base tonight, which was a fun one. Some new faces joined the second base match this year that we'll talk about because they're near the top of the board. So they'll highlight things, but we'll get to that shortly. You can find myself on Twitter at BDentric and the BatFlip portion of the podcast from Twitter at BatFlip Crazy. Toby, how we doing, man?
We're doing well, Bubba. I'm feeling like a champion this evening,
Yes,
honestly.
yes.
I'm
You're even
feeling
repping the
like
hat.
an absolute winner.
Yes, well, you are. We are.
Yeah, we are. We are the champions, Bubba. That's right. For those of you who may not be aware, which is probably a very small portion of the world at this juncture, Bubba, myself, Alex Chamberlain, Brian Slack, and Justin Mason. I was like, I know I'm going to forget. I know I'm going to forget somebody. And Justin Mason, we won the Keep Playing Baseball trivia night, number 1 out of 29 teams. And it was really a group effort. I mean, all of us contributed answers. It was really just, I don't know how to describe the level of teamwork that we had outside of it being a symphony.
It was amazing.
Contributions from everybody. It was fantastic. Yes, so a great night.
Good teamwork. Definitely good teamwork.
For sure. And you guys may not know this, but Bubba is an absolute ringer at trivia. Like, dude just crushes it. Doesn't matter what the topic is. Bubba is there with an answer. It's quite remarkable.
Music I could not help with. Music I was worthless on. Like the intro songs couldn't help you there. But the rest of the stuff, especially if it's baseball related, I have a good guess. Good guess on things. So
yeah, it was great. It was a fantastic night. We won. I know you all want to hear all about it for the next hour and a half. So that's what we're just going to focus the show on now.
Yep. Yeah, raise money for good cause. That's all that matters. In the end, so.
Yes. Raise $17,000 for Keep Playing Baseball, which was really great.
Awesome
cause. So thanks everybody who was able to turn out for that.
And if you guys want to try to beat us next year, same bat time, same bat channel. So game on, bring it.
I mean, are we defending champs? I think we're defending champs.
I think we are. We'll have to double check that again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. But I think we're defending champs. So,
oh man, we should like sponsor the event as a group, and then we could just be like defending champs. You know, that'd be crazy.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, get Slack on the team name now.
Yeah. BatFlip Crazy 3, BatFlip
champions.
Craziest.
There you go. Yes, I like it. All right, everybody. We'll stop there because we could do this all night long. I'm just going to.
We could talk about ourselves all night long for sure.
We easily could. We'll do it on this, not on our fantasy teams. We'll do it on this. But let's talk second base. It's been fun going around the diamond, recapping things, seeing like some guys that kind of surprised us, some you kind of expected, but how they did it might have been surprising, so on and so forth. And I might skip around a little bit because we're using Razzball Player Rater. We're using 15-team Yahoo, so the eligibility is going to be ridiculous on some of these guys that aren't going to exist in 2022. So I'm going to kind of skip a couple guys here and there. So just beware of that if you guys are trying to follow along for some reason at home. And then we have a ton of awesome listener questions. So we will get you guys rocking and rolling on this one. I just have one shameless plug real quick, Toby. If everybody could check out my Twitter at BDentric, I posted a thing because last year I did a bunch of best balls that listeners wanted to be a part of. I open it up now and fill out a form. It's on there. It's a Google form. Best balls and draft and holds. If you fill it out, I'll put you in a league. We'll get started in the next couple days or over at Fantrax. So go check out that tweet. It's got all kinds of stuff on there for you. You could even win a Fernando Tatis autograph ball. So go check that out. So
that sounds
lots
good.
Of cool stuff. Yeah. So go check that out if you guys are interested in playing some best ball and drafted holes on Fantrax. All right. Second base position. Like I said, right out the gate, new places, new faces, Toby. Trey Turner gets traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers at the trade deadline. He was the shortstop for the Nats. He went to the Dodgers, played a lot of second base with Corey Seager there. So we get the luxury of having some Trey Turner play second base and shortstop this year in the upcoming season. And he made $54. Like this dude, we've talked about it pretty much every year, and he finally came through, Toby. He played 148 games, most he's played since 2018, but the power showed up that we've been waiting for. We knew it was there. He played a full season. There it was, 28 homers, stole 32 bags, hit 328, back-to-back years of over 300 given shortened season, but hit 298 in 2019. The dude's legit, hitting towards the top of the order and for the Dodgers. Not much not to like about him.
Yeah, I mean, I know he struggled kind of in the playoffs a little bit with the Dodgers, but when you just look under the hood, there's nothing, as you mentioned, to complain about. The batting average is solid. You know you're going to get really good batting average. The lowest he's had in the last 6 years is 271. But 284, 298, and then well above 300. He did set a career high in home runs with 28 last year, which actually, but there's a couple metrics that I'm kind of looking at. Like his home run per fly ball actually stayed pretty level at 17%. His barrels increased, not the barrel rate, but his overall barrels increased to his career high of 36. So maybe like a little bit of luck on the home run front, but what's 25 versus 28? The stolen bases are going to be there. The low he's had in a full season is actually this past year at 32. He should be hitting leadoff or second for the Dodgers, who will undoubtedly have a very good lineup. So, yeah, I mean, I think we have a question about it later on. I don't think there's any doubt that he's in the conversation for number one overall, particularly with the dual position eligibility at second base and shortstop. Just the context that he's in there, the health. I mean, he's been a relatively healthy guy. And his type of profile, even if he's injured for a portion of the season, he still contributes so much in stolen bases and batting average that you can throw another guy in there and still end up with a really, really great contribution. So not much else to say about Trey. I think he's great. I would definitely consider him at 1-1 for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to that later because I've done 2 drafts and I had the first pick in one of the 2, so we'll talk about that a little later. But the one thing with Trey is people might say he gets hurt a lot, and like you said, he doesn't, because it's true. The big injury he had, he got hit in the hand when he was bunting. Like that's the kind of injuries you just like, well, bad luck, basically. Like that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So I wouldn't worry about him at all, like you said. And as long as he's leading off or hitting second with the Dodgers, life's good. Life's very good.
Yeah.
All right, the number 2 second baseman on this list, Marcus Simeon, bringing home $48 of fantasy value for you. 45 home runs was a career high. Beat that by 12 in 2019. 15 stolen bases was a career high. He's played 155 games in 5 of his last 6 full seasons of baseball. He's as consistent as they come, pretty much. You can pencil in pretty decent numbers. The power's gotten a little crazy. Shifting ballpark could be interesting when we preview the position. But he had a great season. I'm not doubting that at all. I'm just not I'm not expecting to see it again.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I love Marcus Simeon as a player, as a person. He seems fantastic, high quality guy. But I think you're paying for the ceiling, and not just the ceiling with Simeon, but I think you're paying for the ceiling in a very nice ballpark, as you mentioned before. Like when you look at the numbers, he's really a compiler in a lot of ways. I mean, more than 700 plate appearances in the last 3 full seasons, and so that's going to contribute to the runs with 115, 123, and that's fantastic. And I don't think that necessarily changes, right? He's going to be the leadoff hitter probably for the Rangers. He's going to play every day. Obviously, I mean, he's literally going to play every day, like 162 games as long as he's healthy. Obviously, it's not the same lineup as the Blue Jays, but those plate appearances will contribute significantly. I think the places where I have questions, though, are around the home run total and the stolen bases. If you look at StatCast, not just the expected home runs, but how many home runs would Simeon have hit in his new ballpark, Globe Life Stadium, the Sardine Can, as it's affectionately known here on the podcast. He was at 32. So he dropped from 45 to 32. When you look at that 45 number again, he only had 50 barrels last year, right? So I'm guessing it was probably a career high. Yeah, it was a career high in both barrels and percentage of balls in play that were barrels. But essentially 9 out of every 10 of his hits was of his barrels was a home run, which is well above what we would anticipate in terms of average. And so again, I don't think we're talking about a guy who's going to fall back down to like 19, 20 home runs. I think we're looking more at 30 home runs. But again, it's going to be a very different situation, I think, contextually with the runs and RBI that he's able to produce in that lineup. And then finally, with the stolen bases, he set a career high at 15. he was, I think, did he get caught? He only got caught once. So he has been really successful. There's no reason for him to slow down too much. But those 15 stolen bases did come in 724 plate appearances. And he's also an older guy. He now has his contract, right? He's set for life. He's 31, so he's not going to get any faster. And I don't think it's a good to think about Simeon as like, oh, well, he's on the Rangers. The Rangers run a lot, so he's going to see his stolen bases increase dramatically. I think if we think about it contextually as he's a year older, he just set his career high, and he set that career high being 15 out of 16, which is not likely to continue, right? We know that that's not a sticky metric. So let's say he tries to steal the same amount of bases. He tries 16 stolen bases next year. You're probably looking at 12 stolen bases, 10 stolen bases instead. I actually really like the Steamer projection line, the 30 home runs, the 11 stolen bases, the 260 average, because it's really good, right? It's a really solid line. He's really consistent and solid, but I think where he's going in drafts, I just want no part of him. I would really hope that he'd like fall down to, I don't know, like an ADP of like maybe the 70s or something like that. I know that's hopeful, but the latest he's gone in drafts so far this year is 43. And so I can't really stomach that too much. Like in my spreadsheet, he's ranked 59th. So if he falls into that neck of the woods in terms of the drafts, then, maybe I'd consider it, but it doesn't seem like he's getting anywhere near that.
Yeah, he's pretty much a second rounder, maybe third rounder in most drafts I've seen. So he's been a no-go for me as well. We'll see if he falls a little bit. Maybe people all start saying it because, like you said, the Steamer projections make sense. 100% on board with that. But you're not paying for that in this round. Like the next guy we're going to talk about, I've already taken ahead of him, and I would take him ahead of him every single time. So it gets interesting with Simeon. It's a whole lot of question marks, the new ballpark and everything. But maybe he runs a little more, but the power's going to come down. So it's going to be that weird trade-off, and we'll see how that one all plays out. Third guy on the list, second baseman, Ozzy Albies, bringing home $40.30 to your fantasy baseball rosters. Albies was absolutely outstanding, and he gets better every year. 30 home runs this year after back-to-back 24 home run seasons in full seasons. He's played 156 games in 3 straight full seasons of baseball. Pulled up 20 steals this past year. He's gone 14, 15, 20. So the power's increased. The steals have increased. He was 103 runs in RBI, 106 for RBI. The dude's awesome. Like when you look for a 5-category contributor, even at 259, like he's a 5-category stud. Steamer likes him yet again. I'm a huge Ozzy Albies fan, so I believe the sky's the limit for this guy, and he could be your second baseman number 1 by the end of the season if Trey Turner wasn't involved. But I think Trey's going to keep taking that from him. But right now, Albies had a monster year last year, and I don't see him slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I love Albies as well. I think the thing that I really like about Albies is we saw a 30-20 with 209 combined runs and stolen bases last year. And it almost feels like there's some upside, like you talked about the batting average being the lowest that it's been with the 278 BABIP. He did have the lowest ground ball rate of his career, so that's just one thing to consider. But chances are that that's going to regress. I mean, he dropped that down 10%. So my guess would be that he's probably somewhere closer to where he's been in the past in terms of like 37, 38%, maybe a little bit lower than that. And when that happens, it's going to boost the batting average. It'll obviously impact the home runs potentially as well. But like the thing that I love about the home run total is it actually came on one of his lower home run per fly ball rates at 12.2%, which is actually below league average. He had 47 barrels, his highest percentage. He had his highest max exit velocity as well. And he hit 47 barrels and got 30 home runs, which is actually probably a little bit lower than you might anticipate. I think actually Jeff Zimmerman put out a tweet recently that it was like 73% of home runs last year or something like that, or barrels ended up being home runs last year. I can't exactly remember, but
something along those lines for sure.
Yeah. Although I know that like normally I've seen it around like 50-something%. So whatever it is, I mean, there's some potential there. We forget that Albies he's 24. I mean, he's going to be 25 next season, but the dude is young. I mean, he's in his prime. Like there's just so much there. he did this also without his buddy,
Yep.
there. Ronald Acuna was gone for half the season. So, again, he only had a 310 BAB OBP, and he had 103 runs. So there may be a little bit of regression there too. But all in all, I think the package is legit. And I think you can see him replicating what he did last year. And you could even see him getting better in some areas, with one more year of maturity, if maybe he gives up trying to bat left-handed, since he's so much better batting right-handed than he is left-handed. He's actually got a WRC plus under 100 batting left-handed. But
he's a beast. He's a beast right-handed. Just ridiculous right-handed. So yeah, that'd be one of those for sure. We've seen people talking about that before, that this would be a phenomenal move on his part if he were to maybe give up the switch hit, which we've seen certain guys do, like Cedric Mullins and others. Like, just imagine if he gave up switch hitting and got the same leap that Mullins had. Like, all of a sudden he's hitting 40 home runs now. Like, what in the world? Not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's like the equivalent leap in production level, because he's already so good. So that'd be pretty crazy to see with Ozzy Albies. Like you mentioned, Acuna should be back rather early this year. Hopefully they bring Freddie Freeman back. They still got a lot of pop in that lineup, so he'll be just fine. And super young, so sky's the limit for the kid. Like him a lot. The number 4 second baseman off the board was one Whit Merrifield. Got you 37-70. So he had another solid year, and a lot of that was stolen bases. 40 stolen bases. He has 34 more steals in 3 of his last 4 full seasons of baseball. Played in 162 games. He's played in 158 or more in 3 of the last 3 full seasons of baseball. Minimal power. That's what you should learn to expect with Whit Merrifield. But average, counting stats, stolen bases, very, very good. He's 32 years old, so we were waiting for that other shoe to drop, especially in the stolen base department. But it didn't happen last year, so we'll see what happens in 2022.
Yeah, I like Merrifield still. I mean, I know the age is the concern. Like, is he going to keep running? I mean, the dude stole 40 bases last year, and he's going to keep running because he's on the Royals first of all. And I think like he's not that valuable if he's not stealing bases, right? So I think they're going to give him the opportunity to steal bases. Everything in the profile looks really solid still. The batting average obviously dipped a little bit. His strikeout rate increased a tad. The contact rate dipped a little bit, but nothing crazy. I mean, way, way above league average. And then, even within the power department, the 10 home runs was obviously less than you want to see from him. I mean, talk about like consistency. The dude has over 700 plate appearances, just like Simeon in the last 3 full seasons. He only hit 10 home runs this past year, but he did have 20 barrels. So only 10 of those 20 barrels went for home runs. He set a max exit velo high of 107.8. Again, you're not necessarily, you're obviously not drafting him for that purpose, but I like to see the fact that we're not seeing any diminishing skill when it comes to that max exit velo. Like, it's not like all of a sudden the power dried up. It's just a matter of, maybe not being as lucky as he has been in the past. I think he's much more, actually, I haven't even looked at the steamer projection, but it's probably at 12 home runs or something like that. 14 home runs. That seems more like, 12 to 14 would seem like the home run total for me. Again, super valuable. The batting average is key, makes a ton of contact. He's still fast. I like it a lot. I mean, the one concern I think I would have, I believe he's going to be a free agent after this year. I want to say, he's got a 2023. He's got a couple more.
Yeah, they got a nice friendly deal with him.
Yeah, they did. They did for sure. So, I guess less concerns about that. But he still has the dual position, right? He's still second base outfield.
Yep.
I mean, he's still really solid, and he's the type of guy he's going to drop. Probably. Like, he's the type of guy who's a little bit older. So some of those younger, maybe higher upside, quote unquote, higher upside guys, I think will move up the draft board, and he'll fall to later in the 3rd round would be my guess when drafts come around.
Yeah, no, he'll be one you'll get at a nice little value for sure, because he'll be competing with his teammate Adalberto Mondesi in that kind of stolen base draft range. And there's some other guys like Simeon. There's a lot of similarities with Simeon and Whit. There really are. Simeon's got more power, obviously. Whit's got more speed, but everything else is pretty similar, especially age. And so that's an interesting if you look at their steamer projections, they're not as far apart as you'd think. Like, sure, 30 home runs is a big difference, but the stolen bases and everything else, you can find the power. Can you find the steals? So that makes things interesting for future discussion as well. Jorge Polanco, 5th on the list. There's 11 second basemen that got you over $20 this year. It was a very, very profitable position. Like, if you really want to get goofy about it, there were 22 that got you $10 or more, depending on eligibility rules. But Jorge Polanco was 5th, and he played most of his games at second base, 120 of them. So not a fluke there. Got you over $34 at second base. 33 home runs. Previous high was 22. 11 stolen bases. Hasn't had double-digit steals since 2017. Hit 269, which he's been a pretty decent average guy for the most part over his career. But the power, the speed, it was ridiculous with him. He's going to be 28 this year. Steamer still likes him, and you can get him at, I think, a reasonable price tag in drafts right now. But you got to expect some regression. Heck of a season. But I don't know if it's sustainable next year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good there. I mean, there's a lot to like in his profile, just in terms of the high contact rate. The strikeout rate increased a little bit, but still well below league average. He puts the ball in the air a lot, which is something. Obviously, the home run per fly ball rate jumping up to 15.8%. From his career, even including that 15.8% is at 9.7%. So I agree. I haven't dove into the profile super in depth, but my guess is he probably pulled maybe a higher percentage of balls than he usually does down the line, which helped contribute to it. He did have a huge jump in barrels too, though, up to 48 barrels at 10.1%. Barrel rate. He also had the highest max exit velocity that he'd had, so far this year. So I don't think we're going to see a huge drop down, but I do think that we'll definitely see that drop down. I do think, again, like the Steamer projection seems very reasonable on him, which is still a really good projection. Just to give you a sense, like Simeon I mentioned was 59th in my spreadsheet. Right now Polanco is 84th. So again, not necessarily Simeon and Merrifield level. Merrifield's 50th, Albies is 40th. So not necessarily at that level quite, but again, a really solid all-around contributor. But again, like I think guys like this, I'm not really going to focus too much on, just because like a lot went right last year, including the health, which is something that he's struggled with. And so I don't see as much upside. Maybe that's like the wrong way to think about it, because he just had his upside season. So maybe that's his upside, but I don't know. I'm just not as comfortable with him there maybe as I should be.
Yeah, I think like 25 and 10 seems reasonable. I don't know if we're going to get 33 and 15 or something, but 25 and 10, I think it's reasonable. So we'll see how that keeps playing out. Maybe he runs hot again. So you never know. It's going to be interesting to see what Minnesota does with that team. Like, does Kirilloff come back healthy? Does Larnack take the next step? Does Miguel Cenote somehow decide not to strike out a million times? Mitch Garver, does he stay healthy? Josh Donaldson, does he stay healthy? There's so many questions in that lineup to see what they do. Do they trade guys at the deadline again? Like, it'll be interesting to see what kind of protection he gets around there. So lots of what ifs with Jorge Polanco, but second base shortstop eligibility is nice. Very, very nice. And that'll help out as well. The 6th second baseman off the board. A lot of questions about him on the podcast. Lots of questions about Jose Altuvia. It's not about confetti on his chest or anything like that. It's about his production, because he brought you home almost $25 last year. He's getting older. He's going to be 32 this season, but last year, 31 homers, 117 runs scored. Still stole 5 bags. Stolen bases are kind of a thing of the past with Altuve, but the power's still there. Batting average is still there, hit 278 with a very low BABIP for him. Very, very low BABIP at 280. So I don't know. It's one of those, if you're okay with steals, I think Altuve is a phenomenal pick in the draft where he's going right now. But just looking back at 2021 is what we're doing, and I thought he was better than most people expected him to be. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I think Altuve's kind of fine. Like, and where he's going in drafts is fine. He's still going to hit first in that lineup. He did have 31 home runs, on 33 barrels, which obviously, like in Houston, you don't necessarily have to barrel it up to hit a home run, in that particular direction. It would actually be really interesting to see. He's had 181 barrels in his career, and he's had 164 home runs. So, a lot of Crawford boxes there, probably.
Efficient.
Yeah, he's definitely efficient with them. And like you mentioned, like there was some batted ball, maybe bad luck with that really low BABIP. The contact rate surged to the highest point since 2016. So there's a lot going well there. And so I think it's just a matter of him staying healthy. We've really seen him have one bad half season, in 2020. And outside of that, he's been pretty spectacular. I wouldn't anticipate the same number of runs. The lineup, I don't know if it's going to be as good, but it's also just a lot, like 117 runs for a guy with a 350 OBP is pretty huge, but it's still probably going to be close to 100 if he stays healthy. So I'm totally fine with him. Yeah, he seems still really solid.
Yeah, just
the stolen bases, like you mentioned, like they're not coming back. But
no, yeah, just don't plan on the steals, and everything else is just fine. So, like I said, we'll get into the preview of second base, where he's going to address what heck we'll probably talk about at the end of the show with all the questions. He's one of the better values at this point in time, in my opinion. So it's definitely something to think about if you're planning your draft. We talk about how do you kind of like round by round think about how you're building your team. If you can somehow pencil in him as like maybe a round earlier than he's going, it's a nice stable pick to be thrown out there. All right, the seventh second baseman off the board is Brandon Lau, coming in at $31.10. And it's a guy I've been wrong on. I've been wrong on him. I'll admit it. Hit 39 homers, stole 7 bags, hit 247. I was always worried about his strikeout rates and all this, but his walk rate keeps improving. Strikeout rate's not great, but his average, 247, that's actually not bad in baseball these days now. So now he kind of fits the mold. I always thought he was getting lucky beforehand, but his BABIP dropped a ton too this year, and his average dropped. So I was wrong on him. I'll be totally honest. And it's one of those, if I can get him to hit 240 plus with the way he hits with power and everything, he's much more in play for me. I used to just pass on him in drafts. And if he has this kind of production, I'm more interested. It's still a tough ballpark to hit in. That lineup's always in flux because of what they're doing there, but it's still a decent lineup. So Brandon Lau, he showed me some things this year, and I was definitely wrong on him last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been very wrong on Lau as well for the same reason you mentioned. The really high strikeout rate has always concerned me, and kind of kept me away and kept me from being interested in him. But like at a certain point, you just have to say, like, he's got 1,300 plate appearances in the big leagues. He's got a 255 batting average, 76 home runs, 17 stolen bases. So he's kind of doing it all. And in some ways, in important ways, he's improving. Like the contact rate was the highest it's been. And it's very different, especially in today's game, to have a 69% contact rate versus the 64 he was riding with in his first 2 seasons. Nothing's kind of outrageous. Like it's all kind of in line. Like the home run per fly ball was lower last year, or just slightly higher than it has been throughout his career. He had 52 barrels. He just absolutely mashes the ball. It's all there. And so, what's interesting about him, I know I'm not supposed to talk too much about this, is it's kind of like he did exactly what we thought he was going to do. And he's still going like exactly where he was going.
Yep.
He's not moving. It feels like in drafts previously. So yeah, I mean, he seems really solid. And the thing is, I always have a hard time with guys like this because they're not necessarily the type of profile that I love. But at a certain point, you just got to recognize that, like, this is kind of who he is, and what he's providing is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to take the chance with Brandon Lau hitting you 35 plus homers and maybe stealing 10 bags at that point in the draft, which is pretty darn awesome? Or do you want to try to piece it together with like your 4th and 5th outfielder? It's like, it's a mind change. Like I said, I passed on him too, but thinking back, like look at the player pool, grabbing that at that point, and then not having to worry about like, hey, can Christian Walker hit me 25 homers and stuff like that? Knowing that one thing Brandon Lau has proven, if he gets the playing time, which he's had 53 games in a 60-game season, played 149 last year, he's going to hit bombs. He's going to hit bombs. That's what he does. And it's one of those things that he's kind of proven, like you said, in 1,300 plus plate appearances, he's got 76 homers. Like the dude, he can do it. So it's we talked about it a few times so far. And I know as we do more like prep stuff, our mindset might need to get different, especially with, more 3 true outcomes. Batting average is falling down. So trying to get like balance is still big, but I don't think like balance maybe in 4 categories more so than 5.
I mean, he's pretty balanced. Like, yeah, he's
247.
I mean,
I'll take like I said, 240 or better. I'll take it right now with what he produces. I'm in. So, and strikeout rates are all going up. So it's like you got to start looking at things a little differently. So it'll be interesting to see. And like you said, he's the same price as last year. It's crazy. All right. The 8th second baseman off the board. It's kind of ironic. People say, well, Bubba, you love this guy, but you hate Brandon Lau. Well, because Javi Baez has done it before multiple times. That's why I've always been in on Javi Baez. And I get it. Strikes out 8 tons, swings and misses a ton, chases a ton. 31 more home runs last year, 18 more stolen bases. It's double-digit homers and steals for the 5th straight full season of baseball. Hit 265. He's hit 265 or better in every full season of baseball since 2014. That was the first year he did not do it. But he only played in 52 games. Like, the dude's been really, really good. Yes, someday it'll fall off. He's only 29 years old. I love Javi Baez. 31-18. This dude was one of my better picks because he fell a ton last year, and it came through. Like I said, one day it'll fall apart, and that'll be a rough go because I will continue to draft him at his price tag. It's ridiculous. But for now, I love the production.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, it's one of these things. Him and Altuve are similar in the sense that they've only really had one bad half season, or like even third of a season, in 2020. And it's really changed our overall perspective on this. I'm looking up one thing that I'm interested in. Okay, here we go. The one thing I really dislike the fit for Baez, the fit of going to Detroit. For one reason is he hits a lot of his home runs to dead center. Yeah. And Detroit, we know from Castellanos and Miggy that is a place where home runs go to die. And if you look at his StatCast stuff, so he had, well, I guess it's not that different, 29 versus 28, but last year he, instead of 31, he would have had 24 hitting there, 6 versus 8 in the previous season. So some changes, and you don't want to like overthink those things too much, but it was just one thing that I immediately thought about with him. But like you mentioned, like, he's incredibly good. I mean, his bad seasons are like 281, 29 home runs and 11 stolen bases. He's just all around solid. I mean, last year he had 31 home runs and 18 stolen bases in 547 plate appearances. It's crazy. I mean, it's nuts. Like, this, imagine if he played like a full season, which he's only really done once. But
he played part of his season in Citi Field, which doesn't help him either.
Yeah, it's true. And so, I mean, the dude just crushes. Like, we know exactly, him and Lau are similar in the sense that, like, as long as you're patient and you stick with them, then you're going to be fine, because there's going to be periods of just horrendous
slumps, massive slumps,
everything. Yeah. Bad. Yeah. And then there's going to be ones where he can't miss. Mm-hmm. And, he set his high max exit velo, last year. Like, there's no signs that the batted ball quality is diminishing too much. The Tigers are, I think, going to continue to be aggressive on the base paths and try to generate runs. He'll be in the center of that lineup. And while, it definitely still needs a little bit of work. You have some guys like Robbie Grossman, who gets on base a lot, who are up there in the lineup. You have some of the younger guys who are coming up. So should be really interesting. We'll see what ends up happening, but he was really good last year.
Yeah, definitely was. The 10th second baseman, I'm going to skip Max Muncy because we talked about him last week. So the 10th second baseman got you $22.60. That's one Tommy Edman, who, great year for the St. Louis Cardinals, played in 159 games, led off most of those games, 11 home runs, 30 stolen bases. That was huge from where you're getting him in drafts at 262. And does not strike out a ton. That ball was in play a lot, less than a 14% strikeout rate, which was very, very nice as well. He's not going to give you a lot of power. We knew that going into it. That wasn't part of Tommy Edman's game, but the speed was, the getting on base was, the scoring runs was, and he proved that last year. And I think as he's 20, 26, he'll be 27. That lineup's going to get better. We talked about Goldie last week, how good he is. Arenado, another year removed from Colorado. You got maybe Carlson takes the next step. Tommy Edman is a very, very intriguing option going forward if you miss on some of the big guys and you're okay installing bases. He's kind of like Whit Merrifield light to me. and it's a very interesting angle. So Edmonds, one that I had a lot of places last year, because also this year I think he's only Yahoo's different. Like Yahoo has him at second base, shortstop, third base, outfield. I'd have to check here in a second, but last year he had a ton of eligibility. That's another reason why I drafted him early and often. At first glance, he'll have second base. He had 31 games at third base. Oh no, that was 2020. So second base and the outfield. Second base, outfield next year is what he'll have for you, which still helps. But he's kind of interesting if you kind of miss on some of the early guys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's a lot to like in the profile, and some changes that he implemented last year. The batting average wasn't, necessarily great at 262. It doesn't hurt you too bad, but again, his lowest career BABIP there, and you can see, again, I don't put a lot of weight into the expected metrics because I think there's just so many ways that they can kind of go wrong. But 262 average, 275 expected BA. And he's pretty fast guy. So you might expect him to outperform that expected BA, which is really nice. For Edmund, the 30 stolen bases is obviously beautiful. And then the home runs, he had his career low home run per fly ball at 6.3%, which is slightly less than half of what he's been at his career prior to that. So I think there's a little bit of bad luck from a home run perspective. He does a decent job in terms of his eye and makes a lot of contact. Had set his max exit velo high by a considerable margin at 112.9. Last year, 24 barrels, only 11 home runs. So I think there's a lot to like with Edmund. The one concern that I have with him, which I think is something that we'll have to think about, is there's a new manager, and Edmund, like last year, he was batting leadoff with a 308 OBP. His career OBP is 321. And so that's not ideal for the leadoff spot. At the same time, like he's got kind of like the leadoff hitter vibe, and he's done it effectively enough, I think. So I'll be really interested to see. This might be one where like the spring training lineups are going to be pretty critical to just see how they're thinking about Edmund, because you could see him being number 1 or number 2 in the lineup. And you could also see him hitting 7th or 8th in the lineup, 7th in the lineup, 6th in the lineup, and being able to do a lot of the same things that he does, with that low OBP. So that's the one thing that I would monitor. But I think overall, Edmund looks really nice here. And I think what you mentioned about like a cheaper alternative to Whit Merrifield, maybe a cheaper, younger alternative to Whit Merrifield, is a pretty good comp.
Pretty nice. The 11th second baseman off the board, the NL Rookie of the Year, Jonathan India. It was a rough go to start. Looked like he's going to be, demoted. Then Nick Senzel, shocker, gets hurt again. Returned Jonathan India, and then he just took off. He played in 150 total games, 21 homers, 12 stolen bases, 98 runs scored. He hit second most days in that lineup, or first. I remember playing him a lot in DFS. He was ridiculous. Hitting in front of Otto, it was a beautiful thing. He's had a walk rate between minor leagues in 2018 to the bigs of 10% or better each year. He's been amazing walking. He's decent average. He was a top draft pick for a reason. He finally showed that pedigree this year. He's only 24. He'll be 25 next year. And honestly, I think this is another one of those guys that could take another step. Great American Small Park's great. You got still a pretty decent lineup there. I love what I saw from Jonathan India. And it was one of those things, young guys, it takes time. It was kind of rocky early. And then as he got more comfortable and things started setting in, the dude took off. And I think he's one of those guys that could be one of those Ozzy Albies type situations where each year he gets a little better until people start putting him in the second round or something. So Jonathan India is a very interesting one for me this year.
Yeah, I love India. I think, there's so much to like in what he was able to accomplish. 269 batting average, so pretty solid there. He hit 21 home runs, he on 38 barrels, so probably underperformed a little bit there, especially considering, he plays a lot of his games in Great American Small Park. One thing that I think will be really interesting to see is with the exodus of talent from the Reds, where he hits in the lineup, because I could very easily see him moving from the number 1 spot in the lineup to maybe hitting third, or second, which obviously maybe with stolen bases might impact him slightly and plate appearances overall. But we know that guys who hit second, third, fourth are going to be generating a lot more balanced profile when it comes to the counting stats. So you could also see him having not only a decent amount of runs, but also a decent amount of RBI. If a change like that were to happen. So I would monitor that, but I really love it. And he's a guy where, I think in order to really appreciate and understand how he improved over the year, you really got to look at his rolling average graphs. And I hope I don't embarrass myself here because it's been a little while since I looked at his, but I remember his being just super impressive. Yeah. So you see him like the contact rate just excelled as the season progressed, just kept on going up as he got comfortable with the pitching. 81% over his last 40 games, overall contact, 92% in zone, really nice there. You saw the ground ball rate dip as well, down to 39% over his last 40 games. And that was pretty consistent over the second half. He was able to maintain, really solid plate discipline as well. The hard hit rate dipped like a little bit, but I don't really pay that much attention, honestly, to hard hit rate anymore, like the one that's on Fangraphs, since we have such good quality contact metrics like barrels and the hard hit percentage through StatCast. So that is all to say, I really like Jonathan India. I think he can be really good. Obviously, you worry about like the sophomore slump and the adjustments, but it seemed like he was the one making adjustments and the pitchers really hadn't gotten back to him there. So I really like what I see there. And again, like there's a lot of really nice balanced profiles in the second base position.
Big time.
That we're talking about, like kind of in this range. Very similar players.
A lot of them. That's why I said that. And he was the last $20 guy. Like all those guys ahead of him, they all made $20 or more, and he got them all over the draft board. We're not going to talk about any more because, like, we'll talk about some of them in the coming weeks, like Chris Taylor. We can talk about him at shortstop or outfield. Talked about Scope last week. McMahon we'll talk about later on. Cronenworth, he's all over the place. I think we actually talked about him last week. Escobar, France, we talked about. Chisholm, we have a question on here. We can also talk about him next week. There's a Nikki Lopez still got you $12, and he's a second base shortstop also. He's only shortstop eligible, I believe, on NFBC this next year. So there's a ton of these guys, a ton of them, and it'll be fun. And obviously, what we don't hit today and we don't hit in the coming weeks, we'll hit in the preview column. So that'll be fun as well. But we have a lot of listener questions, so that's why I'm going to pivot over to that now so we can get these in for you guys because there's a lot of really, really good ones here, and I don't want to keep you guys or us all day and all night. So let's get started with Joe Mayer at DJ Sloppy Joe M. Why don't people love Thairo Estrada as much as I do?
Oh, wow.
I love it. He comes out with a haymaker out the gate looking at a Giants player. I love Estrada. I'd love him if I knew he was playing. That's the biggest thing. Like, the profile's phenomenal. The hard hit tools are phenomenal. Like, contact tools or whatever you want to say. Like, for a guy at his stature and his position, they're not like jumping off the board, but for what he does, it's very, very good. I think there's just the consistent playing time is the biggest problem. He played great in the minors, just can't find the stable footing with the Giants as of right now. That's my problem.
Yeah. I honestly don't see like a ton to like out of the profile. Just looking at it really quickly, 7 home runs on 7 barrels. So we got pretty lucky there. His max exit velo is 106.3. His overall like average exit velocity, which I don't pay attention to that much anyways, like isn't that great. If you look at his StatCast metrics, it seems like he got pretty lucky across the board. 51% ground ball rate, 53% in his major league career. So that's going to limit the power a lot, help the batting average. But, he's got 6 stolen bases in about half a season in the big league. So the stolen bases are decent, but they're not like jumping off of the page. He makes a lot of contact. He's kind of like a contact only profile. And with the platoon concerns, like you mentioned, Bubba, I'm not super interested in him.
I know one thing.
Sorry, I don't mean to be depressing.
No, I know one thing people like, and he, like you said, the stuff in the majors. Like when I started looking at it, it wasn't great, like the contact skills and everything. But if you look at his minor league StatCast numbers, like if you like go to Prospect Live or whatever, and look at those things, he gave much more optimism to what we saw. So it hadn't translated the bigs yet. Maybe it won't. We'll see. But that's one of those. Unless he's playing every day, I don't think it ever will translate. So we'll have to kind of wait and see on that one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like something definitely clicked in 2021. He hit 9 home runs in the minors before hitting 7 in the big leagues, but there's really no power there before then. So unless there's like some sort of dramatic change, and like you mentioned, I think it's kind of irrelevant because there's only a couple guys on the Giants who are going to play every single day. Yep. And he's going to get platoon, and he's probably not even like the number one guy to platoon at any position right now.
Pretty much. That's one of the biggest problems.
Maybe as like a 50th round pick in the draft and hold or something like that. Because does he have like decent? Well, he's only going to have shortstop.
Yeah, he hasn't been drafted in any leagues yet.
He hasn't, and he's only going to have shortstop eligible.
Oh wait, never mind. Let me check. So I had second base up, so let me see if he's been drafted at shortstop. Yeah, he's drafted at pick 706. At shorts in the FPC. He's been drafted in 11 drafts.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to throw cold water on it, but I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, if he had everyday playing time, we'd have a discussion. It's going to take injuries for that to happen. Dusty Wagner has a question that's near and dear to my heart. Chisholm versus Altuve next to each other in ADP. You got Chisholm at 75, Altuve at 76. Who you got in a vacuum? Have to place a bet on who out earns the other one in the Razzball Player Rater. I know who I like. I want to hear who you like.
Oh man, that's a really good question. I mean, I can tell you I drafted Chisholm. He was the guy I drafted before Altuve, I think, in the one draft that I've done so far. I really like Chisholm. I know there were major concerns. He really fell off in the second half. That's a concern. But at the same time, like he was injured. And the profile is just like last year he had 507 plate appearances, 18 home runs, 23 stolen bases, 248 batting average. Things aren't outrageous. He doesn't have the horrible plate discipline people talk about. I mean, his contact rate last year was 73.3%, which is slightly worse than league average, but not that much. His plate discipline was 33%. So swing. So maybe like some improvement a little bit. I just love the tools. And I think the difference between him and Altuve is, Altuve obviously with the batting average. I think Chisholm with, just the home run and the speed potential that high up in drafts. I feel better about going after upside at that point, I think. And I also think that Chisholm has like a pretty decent floor because of the power speed combination. So I would go with Chisholm, I think, at this point in time.
Yep, Chisholm's my guy as well. I got him in the 2 drafts I did not draft with you. So he's a big target of mine. It's been a discussion on Twitter because they say like he's hurt and he got hit in the wrist. He's got other injuries. I get it. He had a hamstring injury, but and the production, he's still at 248. We just talked about how much we like Brandon Lau hitting 247, but Chisholm gets you those homers and the steals. I think the power, he's got 20-ish home run power, which is great, but I think he's got potential. Like you said, 124 games, 507 at bats, 23 steals. We could see a 20-30 guy really easily. They're going to play him as long as he's healthy in Miami. They have no reason not to. And he should run as much as he wants to. So the counting stats might suffer because it is the Marlins. That is what it is. So that could be a big differentiating factor. Altuve will score a lot more runs. That's pretty simple to see. But overall wise, player rater wise, I think those steals are so valuable, at least to me. I'm with you on Chisholm. I'm targeting him a lot. I'm aggressive on him. And some other people are starting to get aggressive as well. So I might get my only shares early in draft season type situation if he keeps flying up the draft board. But to me, it's like Bo Bichette's a stud. He hits for great average, power, speed. If Chisholm had a little bit better average, this is like your Bo Bichette light because he's going to get you 20-30 where Bichette gets you like 30-30 maybe. So it's a little lighter and a lot later in the draft. It's just I try to find those it's not quite the Mayberry method like HQ talks about. I try to get guys where I can get reasonable production, like not the same, but later in drafts and kind of mix and match things. So Chisholm's a guy. That's why I like him so much. You get a lot of those power speed guys early in the draft for Chisholm. You can get a little later. It's not like super late, but it gives you the flexibility to maybe take another pitcher early or go get a Rafael Devers. That's why I have a lot of Chisholms. I can go get Devers in the second round. Doesn't steal bases. If I go get like an Arozarena and a Chisholm or somebody in a Chisholm, my stolen bases are fine again. So that's just kind of the reason I like him a lot, and I think he's actually very, very good. So he's only going to be 24. So, again, this could be another Ozzy Albies type situation. He's super young. Let him get healthy. Let him get comfortable. See what he does. Like, I think he's very good. And Altuvia, as good as he is, the fall's coming eventually. So let's see where that is. All right. The next question on the show from JR at John Russell 215. Can Colton Wong be a top 12 fantasy second baseman? Had flashes last year. Hopefully he leads off for Milwaukee again. Loved having Adames behind him.
Top 5?
12.
Oh, top 12. Oh yeah, I think for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think let's see. I mean, being top 12, if he stays healthy, right? He plays every day. He hits leadoff. So instead of getting 70 runs, he gets closer to 90. Chalk on some RBI in there as well. Actually, a decent chunk in RBI, because let's say that there's a DH instead of having like the pitcher batting there. So you're really improving there. You bump those 12 stolen bases up to like 15, 16, even what the steamer projection has him at. The 14 home runs, came on 20 barrels. He's in Milwaukee. It's a great left-handed hitter's park. So yeah, I definitely think he can. I mean, he's somebody I drafted in the lone draft that I've done so far. Let me just take a look at I have him. My spreadsheet has his projection as like the 182nd, best second baseman. But I can easily see where if he puts together another season kind of like 2019 with St. Louis, where everything just kind of goes his way, I think, yeah, you could definitely see him be a top 12 guy. And I really like I don't know where he's going in drafts right now.
Close to 200, 190
close to 200, 199. Yeah, I don't mind that at all, especially like if maybe, you are a little bit light on speed. He's a nice little kind of closer to the end game type speed guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's a lot to like with him. Like you mentioned, only played 116 games last year, but if he could put together like season like he did in 2019, I think the power is legit. I talked about it a lot last year when he signed with Milwaukee. I even wrote an article on it that his power plays so much better there than in St. Louis, and it did in a shorter amount of time. And when you start looking at the speed, I think he'll run it even more. He had some injuries that kind of derailed that. Plus, Milwaukee doesn't really run a ton, so you got that going for you. Maybe that'll change, but I like him a lot. He'll score more runs, like you said, hits for average. He's a good later option, like you said, if you miss second base or if you want to go second option, their type stuff. He's definitely a good one to grab. And if he runs pure, definitely top 12 is in the works. Kyle at Terzinski50 asks, with Turner gaining second base eligibility, is he in the running for first overall? The answer is yes, and he didn't need second base eligibility for that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just the easiest way. I took him number 1 in that draft. I was talking about earlier. Did. Yeah, I know a lot of people that will. It's pretty much like him or Tatis for most conversation starters, unless you feel like taking a pitcher early. But what Turner does, you can just plug in, barring a stupid injury, which you can't predict. It's like we talked about earlier. It's insane what he can do.
Yeah, I would probably go if I was going to go with a hitter. I'd probably go Turner as well, just because I think batting average is more locked in than Tatis. He obviously doesn't have the power.
Shoulder scares me. It scares me.
Yeah, he doesn't have the same level of injury concerns. He's going to be in a better lineup. I mean, I think I'd probably do Turner as the number 1 hitter at this point.
Yeah. Kyle had a second question. Also, is this the deepest second base rank we have seen in the last few years? It's pretty good. We talked about it last year. It got real deep. It's pretty good this year. It's not shortstop deep, but it's probably rivaling first base to me. It's getting pretty deep.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, even like some of these guys we didn't cover, you mentioned, like we're going to talk about DJ LeMahieu, I think in a little bit, which we'll talk about. Like, I really liked Brendan Rodgers last year. Mm-hmm. I thought he looked really solid and the skills looked really good. Luis Arias, with Eduardo Escobar out of the way now in Milwaukee, he's probably going to get an extended look there. And he was doing really well before that trade. And really, whenever he got an opportunity to hit, we really started to see the power showing there. Ryan McMahon, Eduardo Escobar, Gavin Lux, we have a question about. It just keeps going. Like you have Kike Hernandez at 244.
And a ton of them have multi-position eligibility. A ton of them.
Yeah, there is. I mean, Nick Solak's at 350, which I'm not a huge Nick Solak fan, but I can kind of see it. I mean, even Cesar Hernandez at 406.
He's way down there. That's going to keep coming up.
Dude's gonna be like the leadoff hitter for the Nats, probably.
Yeah, I love him. Like I redid some of my rankings today. I hadn't done them since like mid-December, And since he signed with the Nats, he's definitely in my top 30 now at second base. Like I like him a lot, and I felt like moving him higher, but I haven't because it is a deep position. But he's not running anymore.
He's not running anymore. Maybe he'll run a little bit more on a bad team, which I expect the Nats will be. And the Nats Stadium is a sneaky good hitting stadium
for sure. So yeah, no, I like him in that field. That's a good spot. And if worse comes to worse, they trade him. Richard Sands, our good buddy, asks for DCs. Which second base guys are you drafting after pick 500 with the thought they might actually get play and help in the event your top guys are injured? Well, Cesar Hernandez just missed that number.
Just missed it.
But anybody standing out to you when you look at the ADP? Because I'll throw some when you're done.
Guys that I would look at. I mean, Robinson Cano, potentially.
We got a question on him too, but yes, he's definitely one.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it's ugly, but Lurie Garcia. I mean, he just signed like a multi-year contract with the White Sox, and so he's probably going to play. I'd say like Michael Chavis is somewhat interesting because he should get a good, decent run there in Pittsburgh, potentially.
I like Jace Peterson for his flexibility.
Yeah, plays Jace a lot for Peterson. Milwaukee. If he could get at bats too. I mean, he looked actually really good last season.
Yep.
I mean, even Matt Duffy. I mean, batting average, stolen base a little bit there. He looked decent towards the end of last year.
I think one, if you want to take a long shot dart on it, trust me, doesn't make you feel super warm and fuzzy, but Isaac Paredes for Detroit has a great pedigree, just hasn't shown it yet. So that's one of those that they just let him run with it for a little bit. That could be interesting.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That was the guy that I had looking later on. I was going to point out just because you mentioned like the minor league pedigree. He's still really young. He's not even 23 yet. He doesn't strike out a lot. The walk rate the plate discipline's good. The contact is good. He's got to work a little bit on the quality of contact. I think that's the major piece that he's got to work through. But there's some there. So I agree with you on that one. I'm just looking through other guys. I think a lot depends on like what type of a chance these guys get. It's so hard to say now because there are a lot of intriguing names. I mean, I'll just what was I going to say? Well, like even Andrew Young, has Arizona, some pop on the D-backs. I also accidentally picked him up on waivers 2 years ago on accident. Tucupita Marcano, no power whatsoever, but has always had a higher walk rate than a strikeout rate. I don't know if he's going to get run this year or not, but he played a little bit last year for San Diego. He could be an interesting batting average speed combo guy. So yeah, those are some of the people.
For sure. Governor of Givener has a question. Do you see Ty France taking the next step and becoming a top 7 second baseman? He was 17th in the player rater, plays primarily first base now, so it'll be his last season at second base eligibility, most likely. I wrote him up as in my bold predictions, I said he'd be a top 5 second baseman going into last year. Didn't quite come true, but I think he performed very well. I think cracking top 7 with this group of second basemen is going to be tough. But if the power shows up like he showed in the minors, it could happen. Like he could put a Brandon Lau type season together.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it. I know you're high on him. I was listening to the Launch Angle pod. Rob Silver's also really big on him. He did have 32 barrels last year with only 18 home runs. So you can see that maybe going up a little bit. He does have a pretty high max exit velo at 111. So there's potential there. I think the key for him unlocking it would be that ground ball rate. Career high last year at 45.6%. If you can get back down to that 37, 38%, that he was at in the shortened season, then I think you could definitely see that because he makes a ton of contact. He doesn't strike out. He sprays the ball to all fields, so I think that BABIP's going to stay pretty high there. So yeah, you could definitely see it. I mean, the challenge is there's absolutely no speed whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So he's going to have to do it without having any speed, which is certainly a possibility.
100% agree with that one. The next question I have is from Joe McHugh. a good NFBC player. Let's hear about Gavin Lux. Was surprised to see how many plate appearances he had last year, even at 500. Is there a breakout there? He had a lot of plate appearances because they put him in the outfield and everything. He played all over the place. Started to get comfortable. His ADP is 211. It's gone as high as 108 because ever since Corey Seager signed, it is straight up rocket ship emojis to the moon. And I don't blame anybody because my biggest thing with Lux was always, will he play? And now he is going to play unless something really weird happens. He's going to play. Him and Taylor and Trey Turner, they're going to man like that little triangle up the middle, basically, one way or another. So I like Gavin Lux a lot. Not sure I want to pay top 100 for him, but I think there's a very, very, 15-15 type potential. I don't know. What do you think?
Where's he going in drafts?
211, but he's gone as high as 108 since Corey Seager signed.
Okay.
So he's gonna keep climbing.
Yeah, I mean he's got a really interesting profile. It's so weird because I feel like coming up, quality of contact was kind of like his thing. Like he was absolutely crushing it. Like he's got the underlying skills, like the walk rate's solid, the O swing's solid, really good. The strikeout rate's low, the contact rate is low, but like the quality of contact doesn't seem to be there. The ground ball rate is pretty high, but it's not like astronomical. It's like 47%, something like that. I mean, certainly you want it to be lower, but then you look at like quality of contact metrics. He only had 10 barrels last year, like 3.9%, barrel rate. Max exit velo was close to 110 though, so there's a little bit of a potential there. It's a really bizarre profile, honestly, which makes it really hard to figure out what to do with him. But I agree with the sense that like if he's playing every day for the Dodgers and they're really going to give him, the chance to contribute and play every single day, then if he stays anywhere close to this ADP, it's kind of hard to pass up because I think the sky is kind of the limit for him. Just based on prospect pedigree and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was targeting him early in draft season before Corey Seager signed because I didn't think Corey Seager was coming back. I know there's always a chance. It was either Seager or Taylor wasn't coming back. They were bringing both. And so I figured with one of those guys out of the way, Lux is going to play. They need to give him a chance. They haven't traded him when they could have. They like him. That means they like him, in my opinion. So they got to play him. And now they're going to find out what he's got. So I loved him at that 200-ish area. Not sure I'm going to around 100. We'll see where it lands in the middle, maybe. We'll see. But like he's going to start getting him in the Chisholm range, and I'm probably going to go Chisholm every time. So it's going to get interesting where that takes place. But we'll wait and see. It's helium time for Gavin Lux, and it's only December. So let's have fun with that. Dave Swan Davithius has a question for us. DJ LeMahieu, bounce back coming. This is a hey, I've told you I have been wrong. I just cross guys off my list and stuff, and Brandon Lau's proved me wrong and everything. DJ LeMahieu is one I pretty much crossed off the last couple of years ever since he went nuts in 2019. Last year didn't really prove me right. 2 years ago, but this last year worked out for me. I don't know what to do with them. So for now, I'm just off of DJ LeMahieu. Do you believe in the bounce back for DJ LeMahieu? He's going to pick 121 right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in LeMahieu. I'm kind of interested because he underwent surgery to repair a sports hernia. So he was dealing with that all last year. I definitely expected some regression. I know that we were pretty vocal about like staying away from LeMahieu this year at what his draft cost was. But, when you look at it, like he hit 268 last year, it's the lowest batting average he's had since 2014. He hit leadoff pretty much every day. And I think Rob and Jeff Zimmerman were talking about this, but like he only scored 84 runs despite having close to 700 plate appearances, batting first in the Yankees lineup. I don't see that happening again. I think if we were to look at like his OBP was still 350. So he essentially had the same OBP as Jose Altuve, similar amount of plate appearances, but he had 32 less runs, 32 fewer runs than Altuve did. So I think that's the kind of situation where like LeMahieu will go up and Altuve will kind of come back down a little bit. Again, like the injury is serious, but his home run per fly ball rate was at 7.7%. After, 10.2, 7.8, 11.11, or 11.1, 19.3, 27. Like the 27 was always too high, and the 19% was always too high. But I think especially with Yankee Stadium and how it fits his swing, I think the 7.7% is too low. The O swing was really nice, 25.6%. Contact rate was really nice at 87.6%. He didn't hit a ton of barrels, but he also had a sports hernia. He also had a max exit velo around 110. So I think there's a lot of things to like about the profile, and I might be buying in, especially with the multi-position eligibility. I think the super high floor for his batting average and the really high ceiling for that batting average, and with the runs that he's going to produce in that Yankees lineup, I think he could be a really nice snag here at pick 122.
Yeah, it's one of those I have a gut feeling I'm going to be wrong on. It's just because he does have the profile. It is the Yankees, all those kind of things that could pan out. I don't know. I've never been a LeMahieu guy. It's hurt me a couple times, and this just might be one of my flaws. We talked about we're trying to figure out our flaws and how to adjust them. LeMahieu might be one of those for me where I just I can't bring myself to do it at that point in the draft, and I might regret it big time. But yeah, for now, I'm kind of confused. Everything you guys said makes sense. Like the 83 runs and leading off for the Yankees doesn't make a lot of sense, but I don't know. I just haven't found myself going that direction just yet. All right, Cattell Marte. Sean Barton asked a question. Does Cattell Marte play 140 games? If yes, he will be the number one second baseman. He could play 140 games. He played the 144 and 153 in 2018, 2019, but injured a ton. I wouldn't be, he could play 140. I hope he plays 140 for sure, because he's going at a reasonable draft price for me right now. He's going at pick 84. That I think he can return that value. We'll see. I haven't drafted him anywhere, but I like the price tag. But he's still not going to be the number one second baseman. Sorry to break it to you.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, even if he replicates his 2019 season, which was not only his best season, but was also an incredibly lucky season. Like, just not like as in like he didn't deserve it, but like everything just went his way. If he put up 329, 32 home run, 10 stolen bases, 97 runs, 92 RBI, he still wouldn't probably get close to touching what Trey Turner is going to do, just because Trey Turner will hit a similar amount of home runs. He'll steal 20 more bases, and Marte has not stolen any bases, the last two seasons, because of injury, and they're not really going to push him, I don't think, because they're not going to be competitive, and they're going to want to preserve his health, because I think he's a free agent, right? Next year or something.
I believe
no,
so.
There's club options for 2023 and 2024.
Oh, wow.
So, I think he's a really good player. The batting average is great. It's key. I think we've already, like the max exit velo and all that stuff is beautiful from him. There's a ton to like there. There's a lot to like, and he can definitely, if he's healthy, I think he can definitely, give you back what you paid in terms of draft cost. But, yeah, I think that's a little bit high expectations to have on him.
Yeah, maybe he has a heck of a year and sneaks into the top 5, but he's not going to be number 1. That's for sure. Edwin Turnage asks, do you think Vidal Brujan, ADP 266, will get enough playing time for the Rays and other positions to be fantasy relevant in 2022? I do not, because it's the Rays, and they like to platoon unless you're like one of the big 2 or 3 guys on their roster. So I think he'll be back and forth between the minors and the bigs. I think he will be platooning with guys. It's way too much of a headache for me. Like I get it in a DC if you want to try to take a chance on a guy with the potential he brings to the table that he runs into playing time. Okay, he's better than some other options. I agree with that. That's just not the way I do things. So I don't think he will. No.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I don't know though. The thing I think, I think Brujan, I don't know. The last person I said should be traded was Vlad Jr. So, I don't want to go there again. But like when you look at the profile, first of all, you got to think about, okay, where is he going to play? And if you look at second base, you got Brandon Lau there, and he's playing nearly every day. He had more than 600 plate appearances last year. So that's tough. They just signed, what's his name? Wander.
Wander.
They just signed Wander to a huge contract, right? Yep. And so that's huge. And then you look at the profile and like what's his, last year he started off really hot, but he only ended up hitting 12 home runs, 262 in AAA. The speed is obviously real, but again, like in the big leagues with the Rays, like the speed isn't going to get you in the lineup all the time. They have Brett Phillips who can get on base and steal bases, right? And play exceptional defense. I don't know how good Brujan's defense in the outfield is. Similarly, like in 2019, he hit 4 home runs, so he's not really bringing the power necessarily. And he hasn't really hit for average since 2018. His steamer projection is like 246. What do we got for his WRC plus? Like his steamer projected WRC plus is 92.
Below
so
league
there's
average.
Certainly the possibility he could, right? Lau gets hurt or something happens, or maybe they have plans for him in outfield and his defense is solid there, whatever it is. But I think he might be like the type of guy that gets traded by the Rays, while his value is still relatively high, because they've got a lot of guys who are middle infield prospects, that have a lot of talent that are coming up. So if that happens, maybe he has it somewhere else, but I don't really see the pathway right now, but that can always change, right? With injuries, things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at for now as well. Steven Swan has a question for us. Is Robinson Cano undervalued? This is a tricky one. I think yes, he is, because right now he's still on the Mets, and he's going to, like, they haven't projected to hit in the middle of the order. If the DH comes, he's perfect for the designated hitter. Yes, he's old. He's having back problems already. I get all that. But he's at pick 540, Toby. Like, at that point in the draft, there's not a ton of guys that potentially could be playing every single day in the middle of batting order. That's actually going to be a decent lineup right now, looking at all things. And it could change. He could retire. He can be platooned. We don't know. But at this point in time, if he is the 4th or 5th hitter in that lineup, hitting pretty much every day, 540 is undervalued to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just look at just look at what he did. I mean, he's old. He's 39. But, I mean, what could do better wonders for a 39-year-old than getting a full season off, right?
Yeah.
To rest and recuperate and hopefully get healthy. Like you said, the draft, the ADP is low. But, I mean, in 2020, he hit 316 with 10 home runs, 23 runs, 30 RBI. Like you mentioned, like they've got him penciled into the middle of the lineup. We'll see, because Jeff O'Neill is also on the bench, and Jeff O'Neill's not that good, but he could be good potentially. So who knows what ends up happening there. But I mean, he should theoretically play. I think it's great. Like, if you're going to get at that point in the draft, if you're getting a starter who's going to hit in the middle of the lineup, like there's nothing that can really go wrong in that scenario.
Yeah, he's one of those flyers I'm willing to take a chance on at that point in the draft. Like, I really am. I think I got him in one of the 2 drafts I finished so far, and I think it's worth a shot. So we'll see. Max Freeze, our buddy at Free Stats, asks, Altuve's batted ball profile is starting to look like 250 to 260-ish, 20 to 23 homers without the stolen bases. That's not great. Am I wrong? He'll be 32 in May, and I don't think his power will age well. Well, it's aged well so far, and I'm not saying, it's going to be at 33, but 25 to 28 doesn't. Like, I think the 22 to 23 feels a little low to me. Could be wrong. We talked about the efficiency of the Crawford boxes, but I wouldn't think it's a drastic drop off the way we're playing baseball these days. But that's just my optimism, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which Max. I love you. You know that. I don't know what batted ball data you're pointing to, like in terms of him falling off. I mean, he had a 280 BABIP. Again, he had a 250 in 2020. His contact rate was actually up, so he's making more quality of contact. If you look at like his hard hit rate for, Fangraphs, like, it's at 30.8%, but it's never really been that high. Like in his MVP seasons, it was sub, 30%. So that's not necessarily going down. He had a lower ground ball rate last year than he had in his entire career. He had the lowest ground ball rate in his entire career. He had a max exit velo of 109.1, which isn't his highest. He had 112.3 in 2018, but it's right in line with what he was at in 2019, and it was better than what he was at in 2020. The hard hit rate was actually the second highest of his career. He hit 33 barrels, 6.4%, which was his second highest barrels per batted ball event of his entire career. So I don't see anything going down from him. I mean, he's getting older, absolutely. the speed is drying up, and I think you need to factor that in. And I think the steamer projection's a little bit high on that speed for sure. And there's other options like we've covered throughout the show, but I don't see anything in Altuve's profile that's really concerning, honestly.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised when I saw the Twitter thread. Max is a very smart dude, so I was confused as well because, yeah, he's not running anymore and he's getting older, but I don't see the massive drop off. I'm not there, especially I was surprised.
And to get to his home run level, like let's actually see. I know we're running long here, but like he hit 19 of his 31 home runs at home, so he's using the Crawford boxes. So honestly, like. You've seen how he swings. You've seen how he hits. Like he's going to continue to hit the ball into the Crawford boxes. Probably not as frequently as he did last year, but enough where he's going to hit 25 home runs a year, and be at the top of that lineup and have a decent batting average. So I like him.
I'm with you. Rob DiPietro, our good buddy, a Deadpool hitter. Listen to the Deadpool Hitter podcast. Highly recommend it. Who turns a better double play on a soft shortstop flip, Bubba or Toby? It's not going to be me because I'm a left-handed and it's a mess.
You're left-handed?
Yeah, coming from second base, like I can do the shortstop one crossing over the bag. Like I've done it in softball. Second base, my back's it's a whole 360 thing, and that's a mess. So it's not.
Rob, you're talking to Will Clark over here.
Yeah, I'm a first baseman.
You're talking to a first baseman
right here.
He's left-handed. Yeah. Will Clark. I mean, I'm the guy in the middle. I'm the quick and agile. Stepping over that bag. My favorite is getting that. I'm actually a second baseman. I don't have a strong arm. Very unlikely that I could actually throw the ball to first base. But Bubba, being a really great first baseman, could scoop it. Like Will Clark, man, Gold Glove. Gold Glove.
I got you.
Yeah, for sure. But I love like that, have like receiving the ball from the shortstop, having that your right leg, that back leg, just clip the bag as you throw it over to first base. I mean, smooth, agile, quick. It's a middle infielder for you. Hey, Rays, if you're paying attention, there's some talent right here.
I like it.
Defensive replacement.
Defense, late inning replacement, folks. He's got you.
Replacement for the double play.
Our last question of the inning or of the podcast inning, late inning replacement. Lil Book of Calm asks, I'm seeing a bunch of Altuve questions and have one too. Here's the steamer projection for Simeon: 260, 30, 11, 180 runs and RBIs, ADP 26. Altuve 282, 26, 8, 180 runs and RBIs, ADP 76. Both at 31. Do you agree with the projections? Should the ADP gap be that large? I think we've kind of hit on it already. Like Simeon shouldn't be that high. Altuve is kind of a gift that low. I don't know. I think in a perfect world, Simeon drops like 2 rounds and Altuve probably goes up like 1. So maybe it's more like 40 to 60. Sounds about right. 45, 60. But that's the world we live in. There's always someone that's going to keep reaching, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I think it's right. I think, Simeon dropping down like to around pick 60, 60 to 70, and Altuve kind of being in that range too. I think they're pretty similar players.
Yeah. One's going to get you the steals, one's not, but one's probably going to get you better. Well, we'll see in that what the Rangers would do. We'll see what they do.
Better batting average, better runs.
Yep, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that Texas team because, like, they made the moves, but if you go to that roster resource page, after about Nathaniel Lowe, it dries up quickly again. It's a very top heavy lineup.
It's not. They're not very good offensively. I don't think
it'll make things interesting.
Yeah, I definitely have Simeon over Altuve still, but I think it's closer.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see a lot of moving parts. Like I said already, like Lux is flying up. Other guys are moving around. It's fun. People are drafting. They got like 20-something drafts in the ADP file now. So it's starting to get going. So it'll be a lot of fun if you guys aren't into the NFBC stuff, which is awesome. Like I got NFBC 50s going again. I got some Fantrax League starting up. So go check out my Twitter on that one. And you can jump in there. $20, all it takes. Have some fun. Get your feet wet, see the player pool. But, Toby, we're going to wrap up second base there. Any final thoughts? We'll be back talking about it probably like in a month or so, a couple months maybe, to preview it. But you got any thoughts on it now?
No, not really. It's a very interesting position. I think there's that like range between kind of pick 70 to pick 130 or so, where there's a lot of really nice profile second baseman. And I do think I agree with one of the question people that it's a pretty deep position this year. And it feels good to be a champion.
Yes, a champion. We are.
Feels good to be a champion.
We are the champions. And on that note, we will leave as champions, and we'll be back next week as champions again.
Man, we got a lot of shows as champions coming up.
A lot of shows as champions. So sorry.
I got my hat too. I keep playing baseball hat. Since I can't wear any Major League Baseball hats because
they're locked out.
They're locked out. I can't do that. It's against the rules.
It's got to be like the old baseball games where we don't have the real names on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But all right, everybody, you can check out Toby on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. I'm at Pediatric. Another recap podcast in the books. We'll be back with you guys next week talking some shortstop, which will have a lot of crossover with what we talked about tonight because these guys are so multi-position eligible. But we'll dig deep for you guys as usual. Keep the questions coming. We appreciate it. But this was Bubba and the BatFlip episode 104. Catch you guys later.